The Neverending Story is one of my most favorite stories, and if you've ever read the book, you will understand why. If you saw the movie, yeah, it's a good movie. Book is amazing, and of course, way more detailed than what the movies show you, because they only show you a fraction of the story. Anyway, there is this part that reminds me a lot of manifesting, and I have AI read it out to you. I already recorded that. But for those who don't know the Neverending Story, let me sum it up a little bit so that you know what is happening, where this excerpt starts, okay? So there's this little boy. He is, I don't know, I don't remember, it's been a while since I've read it, 12-ish, I believe, and he's getting bullied. So one day on the way to school, he is running away from bullies and he's hiding in a bookstore, and he loves reading, he loves books, and he sees this one story, this one book that is called Neverending Story, and he specifically gets told by the person owning the job not to touch that book. However, that person has to leave the room, and Bastian, the little boy, just steals that book, and he goes to school, but instead of going to class, he is hiding in the attic and starting to read that book. The book is about another country called Phantastica, and Phantastica is in danger. Parts of this country, they're just dissolving into nothingness. There is the childlike empress, and she is looking for a hero that will save the world, Phantastica. A young boy called Atreu, he is going on to the journey to, basically find the savior. At the end of the story, he has to go back to the childlike empress, telling her, I'm sorry, I didn't find it. Whereas the entire land is basically just dissolving, and only her palace is what's left of it at the end, and everything else just ceased to exist into nothingness. But the childlike empress, she's like, no, you brought your savior. It's a little boy who's read the story. And the little boy Bastian, who was reading the story in our world, realized that he was the savior, and the task was to give the childlike empress a new name in order for her to survive and for Phantastica to survive. So he names her Moonchild. He gets sucked into the book, into nothingness. There's all black. And everything that has been left from Phantastica is the childlike empress. Everything else is gone, even Atreu, everything is gone. There's just blackness left. And this is where now the excerpt that I have to say, I did shorten it a little bit. I edited out some parts that were not as important for what I'm trying to show you right now, but let's listen to it.
He couldn't see the slightest ray of light, but this was no longer the freezing darkness of the attic. This was a warm, velvety darkness in which he felt safe and happy. All fear and dread had left him, ceased to be anything more than a distant memory. He felt so light and gay that he even laughed softly. Moonchild, where am I? He asked. It was a wonderful feeling, a sense of release and boundless freedom that he had never known before. He was beyond the reach of all the things that had weighed him down and hemmed him in. Could he be hovering somewhere in the cosmos? But in the cosmos there were stars, and here there was nothing of the kind. There was only this velvety darkness and a wonderful, happy feeling he hadn't known in all his life. Could it be that he was dead? Moonchild, where are you? And then he heard a delicate, bird-like voice that answered him, and that may have answered him several times without his hearing it. It seemed very near, and yet he could not have said from what direction it came. Here I am, my Bastian. Is it you, Moonchild? She laughed in a strangely lilting way. Who else would I be? Why, you've just given me my lovely name. Thank you for it. Welcome, my savior and my hero. Where are we, Moonchild? I am with you, and you are with me. Dream words. Yet Bastian knew for sure that he was awake and not dreaming. Moonchild, he whispered. Is this the end? No, she replied. It's the beginning. Where is Phantastica, Moonchild? Where are all the others? Where are Atreu and Falkor? Don't they exist anymore? Phantastica will be born again from your wishes, my Bastian. Through me, they will become reality. From my wishes? Bastian repeated in amazement. He heard the sweet voice reply, You know they call me the commander of wishes. What will you wish? Bastian thought a moment. Then he inquired cautiously, How many wishes have I got? As many as you want. The more the better, my Bastian. Phantastica will be all the more rich and varied. Bastian was overjoyed. But just because so infinitely many possibilities had suddenly been held out to him, he couldn't think of a single wish. "I can't think of anything," he said finally. For a time, there was silence. And then he heard the bird-like voice, "That's bad." "Why?" "Because then there won't be any more Phantastica." Bastien made no answer. He felt confused. His sense of unlimited freedom was somewhat marred by the thought that everything depended on him. "Why is it so dark, Moonchild?" he asked. "The beginning is always dark, my Bastien. I'd awfully like to see you again, Moonchild, the way you were when you looked at me." Again, he heard the soft, lilting laugh. "Why are you laughing?" "Because I'm happy." "Happy? Why?" "You've just made your first wish. Will you make it come true?" He held out his hand and felt she was putting something into it, something very small but strangely heavy. It was very cold and felt hard and dead. "What is it, Moonchild?" "A grain of sand," she replied. "All that's left of my boundless realm. I make you a present of it." "Thank you," said Bastien, bewildered. What on earth could he do with such a gift? If at least it had been something living. As he was mulling it over, he felt something wriggling in his hand. He raised his hand to see what it was. "Look, Moonchild," he whispered. "It's glowing and glittering. And there, look, a little flame is coming out of it. No, it's not a grain of sand, it's a seed. It's a luminous seed, and it's starting to sprout." "Well done, my Bastien," he heard her say. "You see how easy it is for you." Barely perceptible at first, the glow of the speck in Bastien's palm grew quickly, making the two child faces, so very different from each other, gleam in the velvety darkness. Slowly, Bastien withdrew his hand, and the glittering speck hovered between them like a little star. The seed sprouted so quickly that one could see it grow. It put forth leaves and a stem and buds that burst into many-colored phosphorescent flowers. Little fruits formed, ripened, and exploded like miniature rockets, spraying new seeds all around them. From the new seeds grew other plants, but these had different shapes. Some were like ferns or small palms, others like cacti, bulrushes, or gnarled trees. Each glowed a different color. Soon the velvety darkness all around Bastien and Moonchild, over and under them and on every side, was filled with rapidly growing luminous plants. A globe of radiant colors, a new, luminous world hovered in the nowhere, and grew and grew. And in its innermost center, Bastien and Moonchild sat hand in hand, looking around them with eyes of wonder. Unceasingly new shapes and colors appeared. Larger and larger blossoms opened, richer and richer clusters formed. And all this in total silence. Soon some of the plants were as big as fruit trees. There were fans of long emerald green leaves, flowers resembling peacock tails with rainbow-colored eyes, pagodas consisting of superimposed umbrellas of violet silk. Thick stems were interwoven like braids. Since they were transparent, they looked like pink glass lit up from within. Some of the blooms looked like clusters of blue and yellow Japanese lanterns. And little by little, as the luminous night growth grew denser, they intertwined to form a tissue of soft light. "You must give all this a name," Moonchild whispered. Bastien nodded. "Perilyn, the night forest," he said. He looked into the childlike empress's eyes. And once again, as at their first exchange of glances, he sat spellbound, unable to take his eyes off her. "I wish everything would stay like this forever," he said. "The moment is forever," she replied. Bastien was silent. He didn't understand what she had said, but he was in no mood to puzzle it out. He wanted only to sit there looking at her. Little by little, the thicket of luminous plants had formed a thick hedge around them. As though imprisoned in a tent of magic carpets, Bastien paid no attention to what was happening outside. He didn't realize that Perilyn was growing and growing, that each and every plant was getting big or bigger. Seeds no bigger than sparks kept raining down and sprouted as they hit the ground. Bastien sat gazing at Moonchild. He had eyes for nothing else. He could not have said how much time had passed when Moonchild put her hand over his eyes. "Why did you keep me waiting so long?" he heard her ask. "Why did you make me go to the Old Man of Wandering Mountain? Why didn't you come when I called?" Bastien gulped. "It was because," he stammered, "I thought all sorts of reasons, fear. Well, to tell you the truth, I was ashamed to let you see me." She withdrew her hand and looked at him in amazement. "Ashamed? Why?" Because," Bastien stammered, you must have expected somebody who was right for you." "What's wrong with you?" she asked. "Aren't you right for me?" Bastien felt that he was blushing. "I mean," he said, Somebody strong and brave and handsome, maybe a prince, anyway, not someone like me. He couldn't see her, for he had lowered his eyes, but again he heard her soft, lilting laugh. "You see," he said, "now you're laughing at me." There was a long silence, and when Bastien finally brought himself to look up, he saw that she was bending very close to him. Her face was grave. "Let me show you something, my Bastien," she said. "Look into my eyes." Bastien obeyed, though his heart was pounding and he felt dizzy. In the golden mirror of her eyes he saw, small at first as though far in the distance, a reflection which little by little grew larger and more distinct. It was a boy of about his own age, but this boy was slender and wonderfully handsome. His bearing was proud and erect, his face was noble, manly, and lean. He looked like a young prince from the Orient. His turban was of blue silk, and so was the silver-embroidered tunic, which reached down to his knees. His high boots, made of the softest red leather, were turned up at the toes, and he was wearing a silver-glittering mantle which hung down to the ground. But most beautiful of all were the boy's hands, which, though delicately shaped, gave an impression of unusual strength. Bastien gazed at the image with wonder and admiration. He couldn't get enough of it. He was just going to ask who this handsome young prince might be when it came to him in a flash that this was his very own self, his reflection in Moonchild's golden eyes. In that moment he was transported, carried out of himself, and when he returned, he found he had become the handsome boy whose image he had seen. He looked down and saw exactly what he had seen in Moonchild's eyes: the soft, red leather boots, the blue tunic embroidered with silver, the resplendent long mantle. He touched his turban and felt his face. His face was the same too. And then he turned toward Moonchild. She was gone. He was alone in the round room which the glowing thicket had formed. "Moonchild!" he shouted. "Moonchild!" There was no answer. Feeling utterly lost, he sat down. What was he to do now? Why had she left him alone? While he was wondering why Moonchild should have vanished without a word of explanation, without so much as bidding him goodbye, his fingers started playing with a golden medallion that was hanging from his neck. He looked at it and let out a cry of surprise. It was Aurin, the gem, the childlike empress's amulet, which made its bearer her representative. Moonchild had given him power over every creature and thing in Phantastica, and as long as he wore that emblem, it would be as though she were with him. He turned the amulet over, and to his surprise found an inscription on the reverse side. It consisted of 4 words in strangely intricate letters. "Do what you wish." The words gave him permission, ordered him, in fact, to do whatever he pleased. Bastien shouted for joy. He was the Lord of the Jungle. Without stopping once, he finally reached the branch from which a liana was hanging, climbed up and straddled it. The branch gave off a red glow. He stood up and, balancing himself like a tightrope walker, made his way to the trunk. The tree he had climbed was one of the tallest in the whole jungle, and he was able to see far into the distances. Above him he still saw the velvety darkness of a starless night sky. But below him, as far as he could see, the treetops of Perilyn presented a play of color that took his breath away. For a long time Bastien stood there, drinking in the sight. This was his domain. He had created it. He was the Lord of Perilyn, and once again he shouted for joy. He was handsome and strong, but somehow that wasn't enough for him. He also felt the need to be tough and inured to hardship like Atreyu. But how was he to come by that quality in this luminous garden, where all manner of fruit was to be had for the picking? The first pearly streaks of dawn appeared over the eastern horizon, and with the rising of the light, the phosphorescence of the night, plants paled. "High time," said Bastien aloud. "I thought the day would never come." He sat down on the floor of the blossom and wondered what he should do. Climb down again and keep going? Of course, since he was Lord of Perilyn, no one could stop him from wandering around in it for days, if not for months or years. This jungle was so enormous he would never find his way out of it. But beautiful as he found the night plants, he didn't think this prospect would suit him in the long run. Exploring a desert, that would be something else again. The biggest desert in Phantastica. Yes, that would be something to be proud of. In that same moment, a violent tremor shook the giant tree. The trunk bent, and a crackling, groaning sound could be heard. Bastian had to hold tight to keep from rolling out of his blossom, the stem of which tilted more and more, until at last it lay flat. The sun, which had risen in the meantime, disclosed a vision of devastation. Hardly anything was left of all the enormous night plants. More quickly than they had sprung up, they crumbled under the glaring sunlight into dust and fine, colored sand. Bastian's tree seemed to be the last still standing. Now that there was nothing to obstruct the view, he saw how terrifyingly high up he was. He knew he would have to climb down as fast as possible, for the tree was likely to collapse at any moment. Ever so gingerly, Bastian proceeded downward. As he continued downward, the trunk became too big for him to hold. And he was still far above the ground. He stopped to think. How was he ever going to get down? But then another tremor passed through the giant stump and relieved him of the need for further thought. What was left of the tree disintegrated and settled into a great mound of sand. Bastian rolled down the side of it in a wild whirl, turning a number of somersaults on the way, and finally came to rest at the bottom. He came close to being buried under an avalanche of colored dust, but he fought his way clear, spat the sand out of his mouth, and shook it out of his ears and clothes. Wherever he looked, the sand was moving in slow streams and eddies. It collected into hills and dunes of every shape and size, each with a color of its own. Light blue sand gathered to form a light blue hill, and the same with green and violet, and so on. Perilyn, the night forest, was gone, and a desert was taking its place. And what a desert! Bastian had climbed a dune of purplish-red sand, and all around him he saw nothing but hill after hill of every imaginable color. Each hill revealed a shade or tint that recurred in no other, and between the hills, separating color from color, flowed streams of gold and silver sand. "This," said Bastian aloud, "is Goab, the desert of colors."
So if you know about the law of assumption and manifesting, then maybe you also read between the lines that this story is very much about it. So he is in this blackness and he gets to create this entire new world. He just has to want it and it does appear. So one of the first things he is creating is the night forest. Every time at dawn, it is just crumbling and turns into a desert. And then in the evening at twilight, it comes back into existence. So we do have him on the other side in Phantastica, which could be representative of our mind, you know, the 5D as spiritual people say. He thinks something and it immediately starts to appear. Also, we do have this portion where he feels unworthy because in our world, he's a little chubby and he's not feeling confident in his skin. And he thought that he could never be the savior because he wasn't pretty or good enough. But as he says that, he turns into this beautiful looking boy. So he manifested physical change. And we can do that too with the law of assumption. I mean, you will find plenty of success stories out there. Then he wants to be challenged even more. And he decides, no, I want to be in a desert. I mean, this jungle, it's so fertile, there's fruits everywhere. It's not a challenge for me. So the moment he says that, everything is crumbling down and he now is in this beautiful desert that he gets to name. And of course the story continues. He is meeting a beast, a lion, who is living in that desert and who, I believe if I remember it right, is dying every night when it turns into a forest and then getting revived. Or he turns to stone, I believe, that lion, and then he's getting revived every morning when the desert comes to life. So what do you think about this story? Please leave your comments below. Make sure you read that book. It is truly an amazing, inspiring book. And of course, creation for him doesn't end there. He does create the entire world, and it does come with a price, of course, because it is a story that needs a little bit more action, right? But make sure to read it. And if you know other stories like this, please leave them in the comments because I would like to check them out. Make sure to check out my other content, and yeah, I do see you there or in my other videos or in my other channel, Janine Nicole Robotic Affirmation and Subliminal, where I have recorded a bunch of new affirmation and subliminal robotic affirmation tracks, and there will be a new one every week in different versions, you know, subliminal, audible, nature sound, music, whatever suits you best, and you can use those to reprogram your mind in order to become the best manifestor and to dream it into reality, just like Bastian did. I do see you there on personal coaching. Until then, I do wish you all the best now. Bye-bye. If you want to book your own custom-made affirmation or subliminal, you will find my contact information in the description box below. Or if you want me to coach you when it comes to manifesting, I am a certified manifestation coach. Don't hesitate to contact me.